Welcome to The Steal, Analyzing Baseball, the show where we take a deep dive into the scores, the stats, the standings, and everything MLB with your hosts Asher Cohn and Amrit Brown. It's a steal, so let's get into it. All right, guys, we are here with some big changes. This is the start of hopefully a new launch of the Steal podcast. We've been up and down with consistency. But during this time off, during this break, we've had a lot of time to plan, to think about where we want to go with the podcast. And after that, we've decided that we're going to be bringing one main episode every other week. We're going to be bringing short content, which is one of these episodes, and we'll explain that more later, every week. And then we're going to be entering YouTube as well. So if you're watching this on YouTube, will be our first YouTube video. This is our first YouTube with video. So basically, we're going to be doing short content each week where we kind of react to what's going on, and these videos will come out quite quickly after we do them, and they'll also be on YouTube, and we'll also divide up our main episodes, put those on YouTube as well. But for now, these are what's going to be on YouTube, and there'll be a podcast as well, so you can listen to it audio only. But we don't really know what to call it yet, so if you have an idea for the name, go to our Instagram, The Steal Podcast on Instagram. We're very active on there. Comment on our video, let us know. And besides that, let's just get right into the content. So, Amrit, Lindor's to the Mets, and so is Carrasco. And the Mets, they're doing what they said they would do. They got players.
Listen.
Do you like the trade?
Well, I actually like the trade for both sides. I mean, Lindor needed to go, and I mean, I also don't know what offers were on the table for the Indians to get for him, but I mean, the haul was decent. I mean, it's not what the Red Sox got in the Betts price trade, but I like it for both sides. The Mets are going to be contenders now, and I think they're still the favorites for Bauer, so I like it for them. And although it's a serious hit to their cap space right now, although with the new owner, it's not really that serious. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's tough because Lindor had some injury trouble. You know, he's been up and down. He hasn't had the greatest 2020, so it's tough to see if the Indians could have gotten more for him, but it doesn't seem like they got that good of a deal. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big believer that they should have traded him before the 2020 season because the haul probably would have been better. It would have looked more like the Betts and Price trade, although Betts had only a year left on his contract. The haul for Verdugo to the Red Sox is a big deal, and if they could have gotten some big deal name top of the Mets prospect list, that would have been a lot better. And the Indians didn't win the World Series in 2020, so I mean, technically, any year you don't win the World Series, you could have done something different to get better for the future.
Right. I think, yeah, that's a good point. If you're not winning, you got to be building. And, you know, you take that with a grain of salt. There's some teams that expected to win and just came up a little short. But to me, this was a statement by the Mets that we have to be getting another free agent because it's not enough to win. And this trade, I'm going to be honest, makes no sense to me unless Bauer goes to the Mets because if you get Lindor for a single year, you pay him $22 million, which is ridiculously overpriced, and then you have to re-sign him. That's not a good thing for the Mets. They're basically saying, we got this guy for a year. Yeah, we got Carrasco as well, but don't you think now with LeMahieu gone, with Springer gone, two of their top guys they were chasing, they have to get Bauer?
Yeah, I mean, I think the market has cleared, and the team with enough money is going to be the Mets. And every offseason, it's going to be the Mets. And also, Real Muto's gone, and there's one focus for every team looking for a big market sign. I mean, the Blue Jays, they got Springer. They're back in on Bauer now. And I'm assuming most teams in the big leagues who have the money, so we're not looking at the Marlins or the Orioles here, have at least reached out to Bauer to let him know that they'd be interested. And, I mean, Bauer, he loves the attention. So for all we know, this is going to go right up to the start of spring training before we know anything like specific on where he's probably going to go. But yes, the Mets need to bring in Bauer if this is going to make sense, unless they re-sign Lindor, and I don't think they should because it's going to be a massive contract.
Right. And one thing that we have updated for the 2021 season is PCR, which is the stat that we worked on and invented last season, which basically compares a player's ability to his contract. And how we did that is we used another stat we invented, TPV, which is a combination of WOBA, K percentage, and defense. Is there one more?
Base running, yeah.
And base running.
The deal with that is WOBA is most of it, but this is a more significant stat than WOBA is. So this is why we use it.
Right. And so it's slightly better than WOBA. And what it does is we've averaged that out to 100. And so take it like this. Say a player produces 25% more than the rest of the league. Then his TPV would be 125. But if his contract is 30% higher than league average, then his contract rating would be 130. And after subtracting that, you'd get roughly a PCR of -5. And it's scaled in some way, so that's not exact. But basically saying, he's getting paid higher above average than he's producing above average. And that would tell us that he's overrated. Does it say he's a good player? No, it doesn't make a comment on playing ability, because you take a guy like Trout, who's the best player in baseball and who is severely overpaid just because the nature of a $35 million contract per season is absolutely outrageous. So we were looking at Lindor, and it's not good based on his 2020 stats.
Last year, his stats were not amazing, and I do fully expect in a 162-game season, the stars that were not great in 2020 will still be stars. But considering the stats that Lindor produced last year, looking at my document here, he should be paid $8.4 million. And he's never going to be paid $8.4 million. But that's what he was worth last year on a scale of major league players, on the top 200 or so major league players. And I just find that interesting because he will never be paid that, but yet he deserved it. And there's nothing that major league teams can do about it, really. There's always going to be some team that will sign him for $25 million probably next year, at least a year.
Yeah, and the thing is, before you guys say, what do you mean you should have been paid $8.4 million? Contracts are just higher than that. This stat is based on contracts that are made right now. It's based on the league average. So it's not based on our personal opinion of what we think players should be paid. That 8.4 number comes from a player who produced his exact amount, would be valued correctly, and their average would equal 8.4. So if his percent above the average payroll was the same as his percent above play, then he'd be paid $8.4 million. Right now he's played quite a bit higher than that, and it's going to hurt the Mets. Well, we'll see. I mean, they have the money, so it might not really hurt the Mets, but you got to hope he has a good season. And it's tough. I want the Mets – I don't want them to do well, but I want the Mets to – I want to see what happens, and I just don't – I don't like this trade, to be honest. If they don't sign Bauer, I think this trade is an awful one.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong on Lindor and his contract worth. He could very well, he's $22.3 million a year right now, I believe. He could very well produce stats that are worth that next year, because the top of our list deserved $29 million last year. And I mean, with the top contract being Trout at 35, there's not a huge gap in between that. So, I mean, paying somebody $30 million is a lot, but there are some guys who are going to deserve it with special seasons. So don't get me wrong, Lindor could be great. But again, this trade isn't good for the Mets unless they sign Bauer or they had signed LeMahieu, Springer, or Realmuto.
Yeah, and one thing you guys can do is you can, if you want to learn more about PCR, you can go to our Instagram and reach out to us there and ask about any player, and we'll happily give you the rating. We have no means to publish this or have it public accessed at this point in time. Obviously, that would be a pretty awesome thing eventually, but at this point, we can't really release this because we just don't have a platform to do that on. And it's constantly changing. So we'll keep you updated on that. And with the signings of LeMahieu, the signings of Springer, the signing of Real Muto, we will be breaking all that down in our main episode, which we will be recording this weekend. And we'll come back with more short episodes like this. We're going to do them quite frequently, hopefully. And if you're watching this on YouTube for the first time, welcome to the Steel Podcast YouTube. And we're still figuring it out. We'll still see how it goes. But, yeah, we hope to see you back. And follow us on Instagram, share with your friends. And thank you guys so much for watching.
Go Red Sox.